In this video, I'm going to show you a complete in-depth tutorial on how to use Microsoft Clarity and all of the features available within the platform. I'll show you not only how to use all of the features, but also a complete tutorial on how to actually interpret the data within Clarity. And if you stick towards the end of the video, I'll show you real-life examples and case studies of how we've used Clarity at our agency for our clients to increase their conversion rates. So getting right into it, we have the main Clarity dashboard open up here. So the first thing that I like to do when looking at the main dashboard is trying to filter for a good enough sample size or good enough sample period, right? So typically that's going to be the last 6 months of data. It could also be last 90 days of data. Depending on when you set up Clarity, you may or may not have the ability to go that far back. So this might vary, but 6 months is generally a good time period. So I'm going to go back to January 2024. Today's July 29th, 2024. So roughly 6 months, doesn't have to be exact. And now I have all of the data available here. So a lot of the metrics on the main Clarity dashboard, you can actually pull directly from Google Analytics. So things like the scroll depth, for example, active time spent, pages per session, the total number of sessions. These are all kind of baseline KPIs that, doesn't really make Clarity unique in any regard. Like you can get this from other data sources. The part that I find is important to focus on the main dashboard is really this insights block here. So we're looking at rage clicks, dead clicks, excessive scrolling, and then quickbacks. So rage clicks is the first one here, which sits at 0.2%. So this is actually people that are, rage clicking or clicking multiple times on an element, typically to kind of exit that experience. So if you think about a website and you have a pop-up that lands immediately on the first 5 seconds, somebody's barely even scrolled on the site and they're just rage clicking trying to get rid of that pop-up, that's where you'll typically find a lot of rage clicks, right? Another use case might be where, you're on a page and you're trying to exit a chatbot that's preventing you from adding to cart or filling out a form and clicking the submit button if it's a B2B site, right? So again, people are just trying to exit that, and that's, generally low-hanging fruit opportunity. What I like about Clarity is that you can actually click on this little camera icon and it's going to open up the recordings page where you can watch the actual recordings of people that experience the rage clicks. And later in the video, we'll do a more in-depth walkthrough of how to do recordings. But for now, we're just focusing on the main KPIs. So 0.2%, that's typically a pretty good rate. I would say anything really under 1 to 2% is good. But obviously these are low-hanging fruit opportunities. So if the rage clicks actually warrant particular change, then it's worth watching those recordings to see, where people are experiencing frustration or friction. The next thing is dead clicks. So dead clicks is where somebody tries to click on an element. Then what happens is that element is actually not clickable, hence the word dead, right? So normally what we see on client sites is you might have logos demonstrated on your website and people think that those logos are clickable, but they're actually not clickable, right? Like if you have a as featured on or as seen on and people are trying to click on the logos, right? So that's an example of a dead click. Now, in some scenarios, dead clicks are fine because you might not want to send people outside, right? Like the argument for as seen on or as featured logos where you have places you've been featured in, you might not necessarily want to send people outbound and outside of the website because your main goal is ultimately conversions. If you're sending people outside, they're not going to complete the main action you want them to complete. So that's a scenario in which dead clicks are okay. Now, there's the other scenario in which elements that should be clickable and that actually help people in their journey to complete a conversion is not clickable. So a good example of this would be, this is actually an audit report that we do for our clients. And this was an example where this is a SaaS client. So on their pricing section of their website, they had a lot of clicks and movement registered around their pricing, if you can see that on the right? So people thought that these elements were clickable, but the only element that was actually clickable was the button that said get X number of free credits. But you can see all of the other clicks that are registered in and around this area, right? And we'll get into this in the heat map part as well. But this is an example of dead clicks, right? Where people think something's clickable. It would actually benefit the user a lot if they were clickable because people want to get the price, but they're just clicking on things that, are not designed to be clickable in the first place. And hence that's going to increase the dead click rate. Another example of dead clicks would be this website here. So when we went to the heat map tab, what we noticed was that people were actually clicking on this logo in the center of the site, and the logo wasn't even clickable. Like typically when you go on a website and you click on a logo, it'll take you back to the homepage, right? Most websites these days follow that convention, but for some reason on the site, the logo was not clickable and people were trying to click there from the checkout page, from the product page to get back to the home, but hence, they couldn't, and they were kind of rage clicking and basically going through that dead click where it increased that percentage substantially. And we noticed that on the main dashboard. And we actually saw recordings of people as well, right? So dead clicks are super important and they're very useful. Okay, so the next metric here is now excessive scrolling. So excessive scrolling is when somebody is on a website and they're just scrolling very excessively on a particular page, right? So that just means they're going from top to bottom like very quickly. Clarity has certain metrics to identify this. And typically what you can derive from this insight is a couple different things. It could be the fact that the user's trying to find information on the site, but they can't find it, right? So for example, they might be trying to look for reviews and they're just quickly scrolling through to try and find that information. Another example might be they're trying to find a call to action button, like the button to add to cart or the price of the product, and it's nowhere to be found and they have to just scroll quickly to find it. Other use case might be you might have a long block of text that is just going throughout the entire page, and I've seen examples of this. So people are just completely skimming by it and going through the entire site to skip through it, right? So that's common use cases of excessive scrolling. In this use case right now, or in this particular scenario, it's less than 0.01%, so it's not really a major concern. And the last thing is quick back. So this is people where they're going to a page, as Clarity's saying right here, and then they're quickly returning back to the previous one. So this is normally derived, the insight that can be derived from this is that people are looking for information on a page, but they're not able to find it immediately, right? So they have to constantly bounce back and forth. We'll typically notice this where somebody goes to like a page on the site and they're expecting certain information, right? For example, a product page, you'd expect to find certain information about the product, but if you can't find it, you're going to immediately go back, right? So that's also super important to understand. And again, I would consider watching the recordings of all of these. I know I kind of gave baseline metrics for them, but it doesn't really matter what the metrics are. If there's usability issues, fundamental that exist on the site, ultimately you want to resolve them regardless of what the percentage is. Then as I scroll down, there's a lot of different metrics here. So you have smart events, so you can see different stages of the funnel. This is a e-commerce site, so I can see people that add to cart, begin checkout. Again, you can do all of this inside of Google Analytics and a much better job at that as well. So I wouldn't really spend too much time there. You can also see things like the refer, the channel breakdown, campaign source. Again, most of this you can do in GA. And then you can see your browser data, device, etc., most popular pages. Again, a lot of this you can pretty much find inside of Google Analytics. So really the main piece of insight is the insights part of the dashboard. Okay, so now we're going to segue over to the heat map portion of Clarity. I have a live demo account open up here for demonstration purposes where I'll actually walk through the data for the Clarity website, and this will give you a good idea of how to actually interpret the data that you're seeing. So what I'll do is I'll click on the heat map tab up there, and then I'll be presented with the most popular pages. Since this is an example account, there's only 2 pages that are listed here, but typically you'll have 5 to 10 of the most popular pages segmented by the volume of traffic that is coming to those pages. But let's just click on the homepage here. So the first thing I'm just going to mention is you might have a screenshot here that might not look exactly like what you anticipated. For some of our clients where they have pop-ups on their website that pop up immediately within 3 to 5 seconds upon landing, that might actually be the first thing that pops up. In other cases, you might have some weird misconfigured section or layout. So just as a heads up, you want to click on the change screenshot button on the top right. And then what will happen is you'll get presented with all of the different variations of the design, just like this over here on the left, right? So you can see there's a couple different versions. Again, sometimes if you have a pop-up, you might want to swap it out with what the actual website should look like. In other cases, you might want to see your navigation menu and where the percentage of clicks are going within there. That's a pretty good use case. So you can actually change the screenshot to modify what you want to look at in terms of the data and what screenshot you want to look at. But right now we have the main hero section here. So on the left-hand side, you can see that you can filter by desktop, which is a current view. I can filter by tablet, and then I can filter by mobile view, right? So depending on what's your most dominant form of traffic, you might want to filter accordingly just to visualize what users are actually experiencing. Then I can filter by click data, which is what's selected now. I can filter by how far people scroll, and then I can see the area, which is one of my favorite features of Clarity, where you can see the percentage of people that are clicking on different elements of your website, but actually dissecting it by different areas. So we'll dive into all of these. Just starting with the click map here. So the first thing that immediately stands out is there's kind of a equal number of clicks that's equally dispersed throughout this hero section, right? I can see clicks, a lot of clicks registered on the main top navigation. I can see a decent percentage of clicks that is diverted towards the text of the website. So I can see the headline is, getting a lot of clicks. The body text is getting a lot of clicks. See a lot of clicks registered in and around the check marks of the site, which again is meant to be informational in nature. It's not designed to be clickable. So that might be a potential area of enhancement. And Then eventually I make my way down to the core call to action button, and I can see the percentage of clicks that are registered on this one here versus this button on the right. So I want to try and simplify the interpretation of data as much as possible for you, right? It doesn't matter if you're an e-commerce site or you're a B2B company. Fundamentally, all you're trying to dissect when looking at this heat map and looking at the scroll maps is, what is the core action or goal that I want people to take on my site? Are people reaching that section or taking that core action? And if not, what are some fundamental ways to get them and strategically get them to pursue that action on your site? So if I'm looking at this example here, Microsoft Clarity is a SaaS company, right? Fundamentally, what they're trying to do is to get people to actually sign up for their platform. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the percentage of clicks that are actually going to this core button over here, right? I can see 0.19% of clicks are here, another 0.91% of clicks go here, and then 3.93% because there's kind of a bunch of clicks in and around this button area, right? But collectively, as a rough estimate, we're looking at 4 to 5% click through on this button. So right off the bat, this is a pretty good click-through rate, right? Typically, we like to see the click-through be 5 to 7%, but this is in and around the average rate. So there's opportunity to improve it, but it's also not bad. I've seen a lot of client sites where it's less than 1% or 0.3%. So this is a good rate, right? Then what I'm looking at is the clicks in and around this area. So typically, I want to look at what are the most navigated to navigation elements, right? Where do people click on this main nav? Right now, I can see that there's a lot of clicks registered towards the right side of the page and the left side of the page. So let me actually pull up the live page so you have a reference point here. So this is actually the live Clarity page that we're looking at. So basically what we can see is that there's a lot of clicks being registered in and around the right-hand side, a lot on the left-hand side, but there's also a fair number of clicks that are being registered towards the middle part of the page where there's actually nothing even there, right? So that might be something we want to investigate further. The other thing I'm looking at is there's a lot of clicks on the actual image on the right. People are actually clicking within the image itself, not specifically the ones within this image where it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's actually part of the image design itself, but the ones right above it, right? So this hypothesis that could be derived from this could maybe be, perhaps we want to illustrate a video here that kind of explains, more about the platform, how it works. If we're seeing that a lot of clicks are registered here, maybe people are not really understanding what the platform is just based off this headline alone, which better your business is honestly not that impactful and the value prop is kind of missing. Right? Now what I want to look at is the second part of this, which is actually the scroll data. So I can see that 96% of people reach this far, 87% of people reach here. And as I go down the page, obviously the scroll rate is going down substantially, but this is pretty good, right? Majority of people are still sticking throughout the page. I can tell you that normally, statistically, 60% of people, 60, will never scroll past the most top section of the website, right? So on average, 60% of people will never see all of the information about your services, your case studies, your testimonials that you have further down the page. Majority of people will never even reach that section. Same goes for if you're an e-commerce company, right? Majority of people will never even see your products and all of the information you have underneath the site. Now, that said, there's certain ways to mitigate that. And that's what Clarity is actually doing in this case. And that's why people are actually scrolling down the page and they have a pretty good scroll through rate. So fundamentally, what we look at in any high converting website, you'll always notice that they have a couple of things. The first thing is they will always put social proof above the fold. So social proof are things like reviews, testimonials, feature publications. If you look at Mudwater, they have 49,000 plus reviews and a testimonial, and as seen on all these different places. If you look at iRestore Laser, they have 26,000 plus reviews, 4.6 star rating, most trusted laser device brand on Amazon and Google, and they have some reduction of fear and uncertainty with this 365-day trial and free shipping. If you look at ZoomInfo, this is a B2B example, 8,000 plus G2 reviews, and trusted by 35,000 plus businesses. Now, if we go back to Clarity, you can see the exact same thing is being done here because they have the 4.8 out of 5 star reviews on Capterra and the 4.5 out of 5 on G2. So again, the psychology behind this is that if I'm a cold user coming to the website, I know nothing about your company at all, right? You have to give me a reason to actually scroll down on your page and actually trust your company, assuming I know nothing about it, right? So that's what Clarity is doing here. And that's probably contributing to why, a large percentage of people are actually scrolling down the page, even though this is a demo account, but that's kind of the fundamental theory. The other thing I want to look at, and this is for any high converting site, is explain who you are, what you do, and what's in it for me. Right? And that should ideally be conveyed in 5 seconds or less. If that's not fundamentally conveyed in the top hero section, it doesn't matter how much social proof you have, I'm not going to continue scrolling down on your site, right? So I need to understand what the core differentiator of your company is and what your value prop is, and that should be communicated in 5 seconds or less. If you don't have that communicated, you'll typically find a huge drop off right after the hero section, and you won't really see this 93%, 95% rate, right? The next thing that we typically like to look at is the 75% checkpoint, the 50% checkpoint, and the 25% checkpoint, right? In terms of percentage of people that scroll to these areas. So if I'm looking at clarity here, I can see, most people stick throughout the page, but they pretty much reach the bottom of the page. But typically what you'll find is like there will be a 50% checkpoint that's going to be denoted in clarity. And there's also going to be a 25% checkpoint. It'll look something like this where it says average fold. Logically, just think about what information is important to you and your customers, right? Do some surveys, get some feedback. At this point, you'll probably also have a good grasp of your business and you'll understand, what do I know like customers want to see, right? Again, going back to the social proof example, we know that statistically all customers want to see what other people are saying, right? Now, if I have the testimonials on the middle of my site or at the bottom of my site and only 30% of people are reaching there, well, obviously that's going to be an issue, right? I want to bring that up higher up in the page experience. So you're just trying to think about what do I want to present and put that up higher on the page, knowing that that's going to get more visibility on your website, right? Sounds very simple, and it's because it is, right? People have very low attention spans, so the further they go down the page, the less they're going to see information. But now you can actually use Microsoft Clarity to validate your assumptions and validate your hypothesis as well. So now I want to take this a step further and show you one of my favorite features within Clarity, which is referred to as the area map. So I have an actual example here. So I'm going to click on area, and now I can see the percentage of clicks that is diverted to all of the different elements within the page, right? So on the left-hand side, what I can do here is click on edit areas. And now I can select my own areas that I want to see. So for example, I want to see the clicks that go here versus here. So immediately what I know now, right, this is for a delivery service. The on-demand gets 4% of clicks versus the full menu, which is not immediate service, gets 1.74% of clicks, right? Pretty interesting. I already know that on-demand is, typically going to convert higher, but it's actually interesting to see the data discrepancy here as well. Then I want to look at this button here, the You're Browsing. So this gets 0.46% of clicks. So this is actually a live example where we saw on the area map that this little You're Browsing menu, which looks like a button, is actually not a button, right? But it was getting 0.46% of clicks, which translates into 1,000 clicks, right? Which is pretty substantial if you think about it. We actually saw user recordings and did user tests where people thought the button was clickable, realized it's not clickable, and they experienced a lot of frustration with the overall user experience as a result. And they pretty much left the website immediately after, right? They were trying to switch the menu through that button, realizing that it's actually not a button and it's simply informational and it's just a banner. So that's an example of a real life use case where you can take the data from the area map and actually dissect where are people clicking, how should I reorganize my information accordingly, right? I can also see that 8.48% of clicks on the page all go towards the top navigation. I can see that 5.58% of clicks go towards the sticky filter on the bottom, right? So now I can start thinking about how do I want to reorganize my information? Are there any redundant elements that, are getting very few clicks? And can I get rid of those sections? Because less is always more when it comes to user experience design and making things as simplified as possible for conversions. Here's another example, right? So I have a product page here and I have all of the scroll data available. And what I can see here is that as I scroll down, there's this huge block of text, right? Huge block of text right here. And check this out, right? There's only 25% of people reach this point, meaning 25% of people reach the add to cart button, right? So what we're seeing is that a huge percentage of people are dropping off and kind of getting intimidated and overwhelmed by this large block of text, right? We can actually see precisely where people are dropping off. So 93% of people reach here, and then it looks like there's approximately like a 30% drop off right after that paragraph. And then it goes from 60% to 25%. And then only 25% of people or so reach the add to cart, right? So obviously the insight that can be derived from this is that this text is way too long and needs to be cut down substantially, right? To actually get people to scroll down and complete the main action you want them to. Here's another example, right? This is for a B2B website, and basically this is their contact form of the site. So what you can see here is that at the top of the contact form, you have in big letters written contact, and then you have the actual form further down the page. So I see this issue all the time when auditing sites where B2B companies will put something like contact us, get started, sign up now, partner with us right at the very top of the site. And that's not really a compelling value prop, right? I already know that I'm on the contact page. So it's redundant and a bunch of wasted real estate to just put contact us or something simple like get started. And it's redundant to just put it back at the top, right? And you can actually validate that through the scroll data here, where you can see that because this website has contact us and the form is all the way further down the page, approximately 25% of people immediately drop off and don't even see the form, simply because contact us is taken up by such big letters and wasted real estate at the top of the site. So I put together this list of all of the other use cases, since we obviously can't get through everything, as to where heat maps and scroll maps could be applicable, and different use cases for both e-commerce and B2B, right? So for e-commerce, we have things like content engagement. So you're effectively looking at what products or images or context sections receive the most attention, right? Are people stop scrolling at a particular product, right? Where do they kind of drop off as they're reading big blocks of text, like the example we just went through, right? And then you can consider reorganizing content accordingly based on what you want people to actually see on the site. The other big thing that you can do for both B2B and e-commerce is navigation, right? What elements are people clicking on the navigation the most? What product pages, what collection pages, if you're e-commerce, are they clicking on? Are they actually clicking on the call to action buttons in the first place, right? What are the most frequently clicked on elements within the navigation? And then this can help you optimize your site structure, right? The next thing you want to look at is call to action placement. So are people even clicking on your fundamental CTAs like add to cart, buy now, sign up? And if not, can you consider emphasizing those elements more? Can you consider placing those elements higher up in the page, or even different placements or designs to help increase conversions? Right? Then you want to look at things like your form completion conversion. So, even if you're a e-commerce customer or e-commerce company rather, and you have kind of like a wholesale department of your business, how do people get to that form page, right? This is more applicable for B2B. You want to look at the user journey and flow. So how do they kind of get to the add to cart? How do they get to the checkout? What does that user journey and flow look like? And overall visual hierarchy, right? Are elements organized in a clear manner from top to bottom? And does it kind of guide the user as to where they should look, right? Things like banners, promotional sections, badges. How are people viewing those sections, and are those sections actually being effectively designed? For B2B, it's very similar. So content engagement, we're looking at things like, case studies, white papers, service descriptions, right? Which ones are most engaging? Which ones receive the most clicks? If they are frequently clicked, right, can we bring those up higher in the page? Do people even reach those sections in the first place? The next thing is your navigation and menu usage. So typically for SaaS clients, we'll see that the most visited page is the pricing page, and people frequently just click on that on the heat maps, right? We see a ton of clicks getting diverted just to that page, but it's often the most underutilized page and most under-leveraged page as well. So can you optimize the user journey based on where people are visiting, and then hyper tailor those pages accordingly based on what users want to see? So reducing, fear and uncertainty on the pricing page, what you can expect if you sign up, things like that, right? Likewise, what services pages are receiving the most click, right? Then you want to look at call to action placement. So again, similar to e-commerce, are people clicking on the sign up a demo button? Are they clicking on the contact button? And if they're not getting enough clicks, can you experiment with different layouts? How do they get to your form, right? And where do they drop off in your form? So typically I'll see a lot of sites where they'll have like 8 to 10 form fields, and the vast majority of people won't even get past the third or fourth, right? So simplify your form fields. 4 form fields or less is typically the sweet point. We see a lot of examples where people include phone number and it's not absolutely necessary for the sales team. And we see a substantial drop off after people ask for phone number, because people statistically hate giving their phone number out to other people. You have your user journey and flow, and then again, visual hierarchy and design. So the last important part of clarity is the recording data. So you can actually watch recordings of users on your site and get a ton of insight from that. So what you want to do is click on recordings, and you'll be presented with a screen like this. And now I have all of the recordings on the left-hand side. So you can actually see how long the person spends, where they're coming from, are they visiting on mobile versus desktop, all of that data. So if I click on filters here, I can actually see, I can filter by the time frame, the device. I can do it by the user action, so dead clicks, rage clicks, excessive scrolling. I can do it based on how far they scroll, what page they land on, right? Their performance, like the website speed. If I want to see people that are coming from low speed experiences versus high speed, how do they interact differently? Page duration, all of these different filters, right? Typically what I like to do is click on sort and then go by clicks high to low, pages high to low, and then also do the opposite. So clicks low to high and then pages low to high. Because what I'm trying to identify is people that are very active on the site, what are they doing? And then people that are not as active, what are they doing, right? And then that gives me both sides of the coin and both sides of the perspective, right? So I'm going to actually show you a live recording here. So this is a recording. This person spent a whopping 1 hour on the site, right? So obviously very high intent, high engaged user, and this is on their mobile phone. So just one thing I always like to do is I like to skip in activities. Sometimes, if you're watching this for the first time or you're new to Clarity, you can keep that off because it's going to show you the parts where people aren't moving at all. But right now I'm just trying to show you guys like how to get quick insight from this. And you can also filter for the speed. So I'm going to just put it on 4x speed because it's a super long recording. So we're seeing somebody go on the site. This is for a CBD delivery company. So they're setting their delivery address. So what I'm noticing is they're going down, right? And they're adding to cart, if you can see that there. And they're adding to cart, and they're constantly clicking back on the navigation menu, right? And they're clicking on different navigation items. But what's interesting is they continuously scroll back up just to access the on-demand menu. So you can see there's on-demand and full menu. And what we actually noticed, and this is one example of the recording, so they have to scroll down for all the products, then they have to scroll all the way back up just to access the filter because the filter is only on the top of the site. It's not anywhere else. It's not like a sticky filter. So this is obviously a huge usability issue that I just identified in like 2 minutes of watching this recording where they're just going down and going all the way back up, right? So it's subtle things, like you won't just identify very obvious things. You have to kind of apply a little bit of critical thinking to think, why are people doing this? Why are people going here? What can I do better to improve the experience? So here's one more example. I'm going to start this recording and just speed it up a little bit, 1.5x. So this person's on the checkout page. They're going back now. And now you can see they switched to on-demand. Okay, right? So they went from full menu, they were selected on that, and they switched to on-demand. Now, what's interesting is they go back to shop by category. So they were already in their checkout. They were already ready to buy. But now they're second guessing. So they went back to on-demand, which basically means they want the order quicker. They're adding a few products to their cart, right? They're going to still go through this. We'll speed it up a little bit. No products are available in the category, so that was an error page that they saw. And now like they basically just don't know where to go, right? And now they're just stuck here, and now they literally left the site. After spending 21 minutes on the site, they just left it. The reason why is because we'd identified a usability issue in which when people switch from on-demand to, full menu to on-demand, it actually removed their cart. It gave them a warning in a pop-up, but by the time they saw that warning, it already removed their cart. So what happened with this user is they switched the menu. They had already been to checkout, but they decided to switch last minute. And as soon as they switched, they lost all their products. So again, this is just a prime example of how we identified this through a recording where people experience friction. And, obviously this is something that had to get fixed straight away. So just a quick recap. These are my top tips for user testing, or rather user recordings. Try and remove all your distractions for the next 1 to 2 hours. Just focus on the recordings. And really try and go in with the mindset of why, right? Like ask yourself why and everything. Why did someone do this? Why did someone click here? What could be the possible reasons? The one question I always get is how many recordings should I watch? There's no set number. For some people, some clients, we watch like 100 recordings. For others, we watch like 400, 450, like rapid fire. And really what you're just trying to look for, and the true number is however many recordings it takes you to understand the main patterns that people are going through. Like what are the main issues? What are the main friction points? Once you identify those, you don't need to continue watching any more recordings. It gets repetitive after a certain point. That said though, it's always a never ending game. So if you make changes to your site, then you want to rewatch the recordings of the new changes, right? And then identify more improvements. So my top tips for e-commerce, you want to look at crucial pages like homepage, product, and checkout. For B2B, that would be things like homepage, contact, get a quote, service pages, right? To understand the core user interactions. Again, you want to look for common patterns. So what are frequent clicks on non-clickable elements? What are repeated navigation patterns? Like the example I showed you where somebody's just going all the way back up top just to access a filter. That could very much be sticky on the page. Pay attention to signals of user frustration, rapid clicking, excessive scrolling. Are people skimming by content? Look at the navigation flow, right? How are people going from the homepage to your product page or to your service page? Are they going through the navigation? Are they going through the call to action button? Are they scrolling down and then clicking a call to action, right? How are they navigating? Because then you can identify and make improvements across those key interaction points as well. Look for conversion issues and engagement time, like how long are people spending on certain sections versus other sections? And is there anything you can derive from that? And then really just try to take notes on all of your key findings as well. And the big one is combining this with all the other data. So combining user recordings with your heat maps, with your scroll maps, because that is where you're going to get the biggest level of understanding of the full bigger picture. So hopefully this deep dive tutorial was helpful. Wanted to make sure to go through all of the different features and also some different case studies as well. It does take a bit of a learning curve, but once you start just approaching it from a very logical mindset and strategic mindset of, what do I want people to do? Are they doing it? And looking at the data to validate it, it really helps to reduce that learning curve and make things more simplified. If you're interested in a detailed audit of our team actually using Clarity, similar to how I did today, to actually interpret your insights, feel free to schedule a call in the link below in the description. And we'll do basically a free website audit. We'll go into detail about all the different improvements you can make on your site straight away. No obligations, no strings attached. Awesome. See you in the next video.